There is a kind of person who can end an argument without raising their voice. They don't insult. They don't threaten. They don't scramble for the perfect comeback. Yet somehow, the room falls silent the moment they speak. Why? Because real authority has never belonged to the loudest voice. It belongs to the calmest mind. Most people mistake quick reactions for intelligence. They believe that winning an argument means speaking faster, louder, or more aggressively than the person standing in front of them. But the Stoics saw something entirely different. To them, the strongest response was not the one that wounded another person. It was the one that revealed complete mastery over yourself. Anyone can shout. Anyone can interrupt. Anyone can let anger choose their words. Very few people can remain composed when someone is trying to provoke them. And that is exactly why emotional discipline is so powerful. Think about it. If someone can make you angry whenever they choose, who is really in control? If a stranger's opinion can ruin your entire day, who truly holds the power? The Stoics believe that every unnecessary emotional reaction is a form of surrender, not surrender to another person's strength. Surrender to your own lack of self-control. Imagine a castle built on solid stone. Storms arrive. The wind crashes against its walls. Rain pours relentlessly, but the foundation never moves. Now imagine a house built on loose sand. A single wave begins pulling it apart. The difference isn't the storm. The difference is the foundation. Your mind is that foundation. And every conversation you have reveals whether it is built upon emotion or wisdom. Today, we're exploring 7 responses inspired by Stoic principles. Responses that don't rely on sarcasm, insults, or manipulation. Instead, they reveal something far more intimidating. A person who cannot be emotionally controlled. Let's begin with the first response. Response number 1. You're entitled to your opinion. At first glance, these words seem almost too simple. In fact, many people underestimate them. But beneath their simplicity lies tremendous strength. Imagine someone insults you. They expect you to defend yourself. They expect an argument. They expect anger. Instead, you calmly reply, "You're entitled to your opinion." Notice what happens. The conflict suddenly has nowhere to go. Why? Because you refuse to enter the emotional game they were trying to create. The Stoics understood something most people forget. Every argument requires 2 willing participants. The moment one person refuses to feed the fire, the flames begin to disappear. This response does something even deeper. It separates opinion from truth. Just because someone believes something about you does not make it reality. Imagine walking past a mirror in a carnival funhouse. One mirror stretches your reflection. Another makes you appear shorter. Another distorts your face completely. Would you spend hours trying to fix your body because of those reflections? Of course not. You understand the mirror is distorted. Likewise, many people's opinions are shaped by their own fears, jealousy, experiences, and misunderstandings. Why should you build your identity upon distorted reflections? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that people often act according to what seems true to them. Whether they are correct is another matter entirely. When you calmly acknowledge another person's opinion without allowing it to define you, you demonstrate something rare, inner independence. And independence is difficult to intimidate. Response number 2. Perhaps you're right. Now this response surprises almost everyone. Why? Because it removes the very thing conflict feeds upon. Ego. Imagine someone criticizes your mistake. Most people instantly become defensive. No, that's not what happened. You don't understand. Let me explain. But the Stoics weren't obsessed with protecting their pride. They were obsessed with protecting their character. If someone points out a genuine weakness, why fear it? If they're correct, you've gained valuable information. If they're wrong, time will reveal the truth. Either way, emotional resistance accomplishes nothing. Picture a skilled blacksmith examining a sword. If he notices a flaw in the blade, does he become offended? No, he corrects it. Likewise, wise people treat criticism as information rather than humiliation, saying, "Perhaps you're right," doesn't mean surrendering your dignity. It means your dignity no longer depends on pretending you're perfect. Ironically, this often silences critics faster than any clever comeback. because people expecting resistance suddenly encounter humility instead. Humility is incredibly disarming. It leaves very little for conflict to hold on to. The Stoics believe that those secure in themselves are never threatened by the possibility of being wrong. Only insecure minds treat correction as defeat. Response number 3. I appreciate your perspective. Notice the wording. Not, I agree. Not, you're correct. Simply, I appreciate your perspective. There's extraordinary wisdom hidden inside this sentence. Most disagreements escalate because people confuse listening with surrender. They believe acknowledging another person's viewpoint somehow weakens their own position. The Stoics believe the opposite. Listening demonstrates confidence. Imagine standing beside a river. The river doesn't argue with every stone lying in its path. It simply continues flowing. Likewise, someone grounded in wisdom can hear opposing opinions without feeling threatened. Think about the strongest leaders you've encountered. Did they interrupt constantly? Or did they allow others to speak before responding? Real confidence listens. Fragile confidence interrupts. This response accomplishes something profound. It tells the other person, I heard you. Many conflicts continue not because people disagree, but because neither person feels heard. Once someone feels acknowledged, their emotional intensity often begins fading. This doesn't require abandoning your own beliefs. It simply demonstrates emotional maturity. The Stoics believed wisdom begins with observation, not reaction. Sometimes the smartest response isn't proving someone wrong. It's allowing them to fully reveal themselves. People often expose far more about their own character than yours when you simply listen calmly. Pause for a moment and notice the pattern emerging. None of these responses are clever insults. None rely on humiliation. None attempt to dominate another person. Instead, they all communicate one thing. I refuse to let my emotions become your entertainment. That quiet confidence is far more powerful than any sharp comeback, because arguments are temporary. Character is permanent. Unfortunately, most people never discover this. They spend years sharpening their tongue, while neglecting the discipline required to master their own mind. The Stoics understood that words carry weight only when supported by character. Without inner discipline, even the smartest sentence sounds hollow. Imagine two warriors carrying identical swords. One is trained for decades. The other picked up the weapon yesterday. The sword isn't what creates confidence. The training is. Likewise, these responses aren't powerful simply because of the words themselves. They become powerful because of the calmness behind them. Anyone can memorize a sentence. Very few can deliver it without anger. That difference changes everything. Because people don't just hear your words. They feel your emotional state. Calmness communicates authority. Desperation communicates weakness. And nothing unsettles a manipulative person more than discovering they can no longer control your emotions. There's a moment in every confrontation when you must make a decision. Will you protect your ego, or will you protect your peace? Most people never realize those two goals often stand on opposite sides of the same road. The ego wants to win every argument. Peace wants to choose the arguments worth having. The Stoics understood that not every battle deserves your energy. In fact, one of the greatest signs of wisdom is knowing when no response is the strongest response. Imagine a hunter deep in the forest. He doesn't fire his arrow every time he hears a sound. If he did, he would quickly run out of arrows long before reaching his goal. Instead, he waits. He observes. He chooses carefully. Your words should be no different. Every sentence you speak costs attention. Every emotional reaction costs energy. Every unnecessary argument steals time that could have been invested in building your life. This is why the Stoics treated words as something valuable, not something to be spent carelessly. The person who speaks less often says more, and the person who chooses their moments wisely becomes impossible to manipulate. Let's continue with the fourth response. Response number 4. I have nothing to prove. These 6 words are incredibly powerful because they reveal complete freedom from a need for validation. Think about how many conflicts begin because someone feels challenged. Someone questions your intelligence, your success, your character, your decisions. Immediately, the ego whispers, prove them wrong. So you explain, you defend yourself, you argue, you try to convince them. But ask yourself one simple question. If someone is already committed to misunderstanding you, will another explanation suddenly change their mind? Usually not. The Stoics understood that truth doesn't become stronger because you argue for it longer. Imagine a diamond lying deep beneath the earth. Does it become less valuable because no one has discovered it yet? Of course not. Its worth exists independently of recognition. Your character should work the same way. If your integrity depends on convincing everyone else, then your confidence is resting on a foundation you cannot control. Marcus Aurelius wrote countless reminders to himself, not because he wanted public approval, but because he wanted to remain faithful to his own principles. He understood that self-respect is earned from within, not borrowed from applause. When you calmly say, "I have nothing to prove," you send a message far deeper than the words themselves. You communicate. My actions will speak louder than my explanations. That kind of confidence cannot be faked, because it isn't built on pride. It's built on certainty, and certainty doesn't shout. It simply continues moving forward. Response number 5. Let's agree to disagree. Many people hear this phrase and think it's an escape. The Stoics would call it discernment. Not every disagreement has a solution. Some people don't seek understanding. They seek victory. Others don't ask questions because they're curious. They ask questions because they've already decided on the answer. Imagine trying to teach music to someone wearing headphones with the volume turned all the way up. No matter how beautiful the melody is, they cannot hear it. The problem isn't the music. The problem is that they aren't listening. Many conversations follow the same pattern. People speak only to prepare their next response, not to understand. The Stoics believe wisdom requires recognizing reality instead of fighting against it. Reality is this: you cannot force another person to think differently. You cannot argue someone into maturity. You cannot reason with someone who has no interest in reason. And once you accept that truth, an incredible sense of freedom begins to emerge. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to change every mind, you begin investing your energy where it actually produces results. Improving yourself, strengthening your character, building your future. The phrase, "let's agree to disagree," doesn't mean you surrendered your beliefs. It means you recognize that continuing the conversation serves no meaningful purpose. Imagine standing beside a river flowing toward the sea. Would you waste your entire day arguing with the current, or would you simply continue your journey? Wisdom knows the difference between persistence and stubbornness. One builds your future. The other keeps you trapped in yesterday's conversation. Walking away from a pointless argument is not losing. It's refusing to waste what you can never recover: your time. Notice something remarkable about these responses. They don't seek control over another person. They demonstrate control over yourself. That distinction changes everything. Most people spend years trying to master persuasion. The Stoics spent their lives mastering themselves because they understood a timeless truth. If you cannot govern your own emotions, you will always become vulnerable to someone else's intentions. Imagine a king ruling a vast kingdom. His greatest responsibility isn't defeating neighboring armies. It is maintaining order within his own walls. If his own city falls into chaos, outside victories become meaningless. Your mind is that kingdom. Every insult that enters without permission, every grudge that refuses to leave, every emotional outburst that takes control weakens your inner government. The Stoics believe self-rule is the highest form of leadership. Lead yourself first. Then your words naturally carry greater weight. There's another lesson hidden inside silence itself. Most people fear silence because they mistake it for emptiness. In reality, silence often creates the strongest presence in a conversation. Think about a courtroom. When the judge enters, the room becomes quiet, not because silence is weak, because silence commands attention. Likewise, when someone insults you and you refuse to react immediately, something interesting happens. The emotional momentum suddenly stops. The other person expected resistance. Instead, they encounter composure. That composure forces them to face something unexpected: themselves. Many people reveal far more about their character when no one interrupts them. The angry person becomes louder. The manipulative person becomes more obvious. The dishonest person begins contradicting themselves. Meanwhile, your silence protects your dignity. It allows truth to surface naturally. This doesn't mean remaining silent forever. The Stoics never encourage silence born from fear. They encourage silence born from wisdom. There is a tremendous difference. Fear remains silent because it feels powerless. Wisdom remains silent because it has already measured the situation and discovered that unnecessary words would improve nothing. Imagine a sword resting peacefully inside its sheath. It isn't weak because it isn't swinging wildly. Its strength comes from restraint. Anyone can lose control. Very few people can possess power without constantly displaying it. That is the discipline the Stoics admired, the ability to speak when necessary and remain silent when unnecessary. Eventually, people begin noticing something different about you. You no longer rush to explain yourself. You no longer become defensive over every criticism. You no longer chase the last word. Instead, you become calm, steady, intentional. Ironically, this often earns more respect than years of arguing ever could, because people trust those who trust themselves, and self-trust rarely needs constant confirmation. The strongest tree in the forest doesn't spend its life proving it's rooted. It simply remains standing through every season. Become like that tree. Let your consistency answer questions. Let your discipline answer criticism. Let your character answer doubt. And let your silence remind people that true strength never depends on speaking the loudest. There is an ancient lesson that the Stoics return to again and again. The strongest person is not the one who defeats the most enemies. It is the one who is no longer ruled by them. Read that again, because hidden inside those words is a kind of freedom that very few people ever experience. Most people spend their lives believing they are fighting other people. In reality, they are fighting their own impulses, their own pride, their own need to be understood, their own fear of being judged. The moment you conquer those things, something extraordinary happens. No one can easily manipulate you anymore. Think about the people who seem impossible to provoke. Someone insults them. They remain calm. Someone doubts them. They continue working. Someone spreads rumors about them. They keep living according to their values. At first, this looks like confidence, but it goes much deeper than that. It is self-mastery. And self-mastery has always been the highest goal of Stoicism. Let's continue with the sixth response. Response number 6. Time will tell. Few responses are more powerful than this. Why? Because it shows complete trust in reality. Most people panic when they are misunderstood. They rush to defend themselves. They explain every detail. They desperately try to correct every false impression. But the Stoics understood something most people overlook. Truth is patient. Lies are impatient. Imagine planting an oak tree. The day after planting it, someone laughs and says, "Nothing is growing." Would you dig up the seed just to prove them wrong? Of course not. You understand that growth requires time. Character works exactly the same way. People may question your intentions today. Let them. They may underestimate your abilities. Let them. They may assume you'll never succeed. Let them. If your actions remain consistent, time will eventually reveal what arguments never could. Marcus Aurelius never spent his days chasing approval. He focused on living honorably. He understood that a life lived with integrity eventually becomes its own defense. Imagine the sun hidden behind dark clouds. For a while, someone might say, "The sun is gone," but the sun doesn't argue. It doesn't announce its presence. It simply continues shining. Soon enough, the clouds pass. Truth behaves in much the same way. This response teaches an important lesson. Stop trying to force people to see what only time can reveal. Sometimes your greatest defense is your consistency, not your explanation. The people who matter will eventually recognize your character. The people who refuse to recognize it were never going to be convinced anyway. So, why surrender your peace trying to accomplish the impossible? When you calmly say, "Time will tell," you place your confidence where it belongs, not in opinions, but in your actions. and actions have a remarkable way of speaking long after conversations have ended. Response number 7. Say nothing, then walk away. This is the most difficult response of all, not because it requires words, because it requires extraordinary discipline. Most people believe silence means they have lost. The Stoics believe silence often means you have already won. Imagine standing before a mirror. If you become angry with your reflection and begin shouting at it, what changes? Nothing. The reflection simply returns whatever you give it. Some conversations work the same way. The more emotion you bring, the more emotion you receive. The more anger you display, the more anger grows. Now imagine quietly turning around and leaving the room. The argument immediately loses its audience. Its energy disappears. Its purpose collapses. There are people who thrive on reactions. Your frustration feeds them. Your anger entertains them. Your explanations encourage them. Remove your reaction, and you remove their power. The Stoics understood that silence can be the highest expression of confidence, not because you have nothing to say, because you have nothing to prove. Imagine a king walking through his kingdom. A child throws a pebble toward the road. Does the king stop his entire procession to argue with the child? Of course not. Not because the child lacks value, but because the king understands his responsibility is greater than his pride. Your purpose deserves the same protection. Every unnecessary argument delays your journey. Every pointless conflict steals your attention. Every emotional battle drains strength that could have been invested somewhere meaningful. Ask yourself honestly, how many hours of your life have disappeared because you couldn't let one comment go? How many nights have you spent replaying conversations that changed nothing? How many opportunities have been delayed because your attention remained trapped in proving someone wrong? The Stoics would ask a different question. What could you have built with that energy instead? A new skill? A healthier body? A peaceful mind? A stronger character? These things create lasting rewards. Arguments rarely do. Walking away is often misunderstood. People call it weakness, cowardice, defeat. But those judgments usually come from people who mistake noise for strength. Real strength is having the ability to respond and choosing not to. There's a profound difference between lacking power and refusing to misuse it. A sword resting peacefully inside its sheath is not powerless. It is controlled. Likewise, your silence becomes powerful when it comes from choice rather than fear. The greatest victory is invisible. As you begin practicing these 7 responses, you may notice something unexpected. The people around you won't always change. Some will continue criticizing. Some will continue judging. Some will continue misunderstanding you. Stoicism never promised that mastering yourself would change everyone else. It promised something far more valuable. It would change you. You'll stop feeling obligated to explain every decision. You'll stop reacting to every insult. You'll stop chasing approval from people who have never contributed to your growth. And in that freedom, you'll discover a kind of confidence that cannot be purchased. Because it isn't built on reputation. It's built on character. Character is the one possession no one can take without your permission. Money can disappear. Status can fade. Popularity comes and goes. Even physical strength changes with time. But a disciplined mind, a calm spirit, an honorable character, these become stronger with every challenge you overcome. That is why the Stoics invested so heavily in their inner lives. They knew that external victories are temporary. Internal victories last forever. A final reflection. Imagine 2 men standing at the edge of a cliff. The first spends his entire life shouting into the valley, desperate for his echo to be louder than everyone else's. The second quietly begins climbing the mountain. Years pass. The first man is still arguing with echoes. The second has reached the summit. One invested his life in proving himself. The other invested his life in improving himself. Which one truly succeeded? This is the choice every one of us faces. You can spend your days chasing the last word, or you can spend your days becoming the kind of person who no longer needs it. The world will always contain critics. It will always contain difficult people. It will always contain those who misunderstand you. You cannot silence every voice around you, but but you can silence the impulse within yourself that believes every voice deserves a response. And that is where real power begins. So the next time someone insults you, pause. The next time someone questions your worth, smile. The next time someone tries to provoke you, remember these 7 Stoic responses. You're entitled to your opinion. Perhaps you're right. I appreciate your perspective. I have nothing to prove. Let's agree to disagree. Time will tell. And when wisdom demands it, say nothing at all, then walk away. These are more than clever replies. They are reminders that no one has the power to disturb your peace unless you hand them the keys. Because, in the end, the loudest person in the room rarely commands the most respect. The one who remains calm when everyone else loses control is the one people never forget. Thank you for watching. If this message challenged the way you think about conflict, don't let it remain just another video. Choose one of these 7 responses and practice it the next time life tests your patience. If you're committed to building emotional discipline, inner peace, and the unshakable mindset of the Stoics, subscribe to the channel and continue this journey with us. Until next time, remember this. The strongest response isn't the one that wins the argument. It's the one that proves you've already mastered yourself.